We do a little bonus episode of My Baby Plays the Harmonica to talk about why the harmonica is such an excellent blues instrument, or the blues instrument. I don't know, maybe guitar is the blues instrument. And also just a little brief thing about me as a player and stuff. All right. The harmonica is an incredibly simple instrument, really. I mean, they come in all kinds of configurations and complexities. But, you know, especially these little diatonics and Richter tuning are really rather simple. It's just a plate of reeds. You know, here's the mouth part. And the reeds are just, they're sometimes described as springs, but they're just wafers of brass. Other materials are sometimes used. Someone's making plastic ones now, I think. And they are free reeds because they just vibrate freely. They're attached at one end and they vibrate. And they make a nice, they have a nice little rasp to them. I'd say the basic timbre of a free reed is one of the reasons why this works in these genres, folk genres, roots genres. Be a little hard to describe, but there are other free reed instruments such as the accordion, and other squeeze box type of instruments. Hohner makes those too, and also the melodica. I don't know if you've ever seen like someone blow that dude on late night. John Baptiste plays one all the time, which is cool. But it's just a harmonica with a keyboard on it, and you. I love the melodica player Augustus Pablo. I'm not sure why I love the sound of a free reed so much, but I do. Now, okay, so the harmonica was invented, sort of in a rolling process through maybe the first half of the 19th century in Germany. Maybe free reed instruments were, the idea was imported from China, maybe, I don't know. I don't think there are a number of free reed instruments in Europe before the 19th century. Lord, I really should have done more than look at the Wikipedia article, though. All right, so Hohner and others started to produce, and maybe Hohner was first to mass produce harmonicas in early to mid 19th century Germany. They started to be, and they were, I think one way to think about them is that they were inexpensive musical toys. Sort of like the, even though they used them in bands and stuff like this, especially in Germany, maybe sort of novelty acts, really. But, so like a little like a kazoo, or, or the way some people use a recorder, like inexpensive, good way to maybe introduce a child to music on a rudimentary level, and a really simple, comprehensible musical instrument that is designed for ease of playing, right? And has the status somewhere between a musical instrument and a toy, right? Supposedly Abraham Lincoln, see, I did read the Wikipedia article. Supposedly Abraham Lincoln kept one in his pocket. Well, they're easy to keep in your pocket. And that's one huge advantage of the harmonica. All right? It's the most portable musical instrument in the world. When I was a teenage harmonica player, I was always looking for a chance to jam. Or I would just busk on corners and shit like this, like at DuPont Circle or whatever in D.C., or when I was traveling around in Europe or living in England and stuff like this. And I always had a harmonica in my pocket. No reason not to. Huh? A guitar player doesn't always have a guitar in his pocket. A drummer don't have a drum kit in his pocket. But a harmonica player has this instrument in his pocket. Right? All right. Now, talk about advantages. Like, say you are a poor broke-ass musician in 1920 riding the blinds or whatever, okay? You're hopping freight trains maybe, or you're hitchhiking or whatever. Like, I don't know, you're trying to get from place to place and play and gig and stuff like that. Well, what's the easiest instrument to carry, man? And on your journeys, Robert Johnson or whatever, like I guess obviously he was a guitar player, the harmonica. That's a huge advantage, man. So I love the sound. And I love the convenience of having the thing on you whenever you like. And then they're cheap, right? I mean, they're not as cheap now as they were, but when I started in the 70s, I was paying about $5 for a harp. All right, so that you know, I mean, that seemed significant to me at the time, actually. I maybe had a $5 allowance or something, right? A weekly allowance. But, you know, it wasn't the end of the world if the harp went sour, which they did. You know? It wasn't impossible to obtain harps in different keys and stuff like this, you know? So it was good for, like, a broke kid. It's, you know, a good instrument for a broke kid. My parents didn't have to shell out like they did for the viola that I played in elementary school or whatever, I guess. Probably. So, I mean, these are obvious advantages, especially for, like, poor people trying to make music. All right, it has, you know, other musical advantages, too. You know, the idea of bending notes. So you don't have a complete chromatic scale on here at all. Notes are omitted and notes repeat in this Richter tune thingummy. All right, but you have bends. And, you know, so you can twist the reed, make it go, wow, wow. Now you can use that to produce precise semitones, okay? Like, you know, like these guys like, say, Jason Ritchie or others who can, Pierre Beauregard, who can play a chromatic scale on a diatonic. And they do that by absolute precise bending. Bending is done with the tongue and the embouchure. I don't really try to do that. I bend much more carelessly and stuff like this. But all right, at any rate, though, and the upper end notes can be the blow notes. Only the suck notes can be bent on the lower end of a harp, except for these new harps they're making now with these crazy reeds that will bend. I haven't really tried them even. I sort of don't want to. You can bend the very top notes, when the blow notes, and that's an effect that is used at times. Did I really want to show this? Well, I mean, just to show you a blow bend real quick. This is Whammer Jammer by Jay Giles. Right, that's a blow bend, right on the top of the harmonica. And players like Jimmy Reed and others use blow bends. So, yeah, I guess might think of this as like digital versus analog music. There's like the 12 tones, okay, in a scale. And then there's all kinds of, obviously, the space between any two notes is an infinitely large spectrum of continuous change, okay? So, I mean, and a key in blues and country and kind of folk expressiveness, I think, is we don't play this note and this note and this note and this note, and so we can't necessarily read it off of a chart. we play all the notes in between in a continuous circuit, or we hit funky semitones everywhere. This might even be the case that, especially early on, earlier in the 20th century, the way I kind of remember even the Marine Band, not all of them were perfectly well tuned, okay? Like some of them were a little off or whatever. And sometimes it just sounded really bad and you threw the harp away. Okay, sadly. But sometimes no one's going to let you blow the harp to try it. But they had these little testers. Anyway, it might be even that the roughness of the tuning and stuff like this had a blues-y effect, right? But again, the idea that there are infinitely many notes between D and E, and is going to be, that's going to have expressive capacities, right? When I boom, 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 it's whoa. All right. It sounds more like a human voice groaning or laughing. Right? They don't do that in, first D flat, then D, then, E flat. They go, oh. Or the human voice in song has that quality, right? It hits, you can, that's a huge advantage of the human voice. I mean, one way to see this is maybe the piano. The keys give you the notes and there's no getting in between them, except sort of by rolling them. I mean, that does work as a blues instrument, and that's one reason, because you roll if you're a boogie piano player. You're creating the effect of a continuous shift of tone, even though you can't actually literally do that on a piano. I mean, another example of this is the slide guitar, right? Which is an adaptation of a instrument where you can, almost no matter what on a guitar, you can get all the semitones, I guess, but designed to make it a continuous, much more significantly potentially expressive voice on the guitar. The slide is key, and obviously slide guitar was also innovated by blues players. They sound similar in certain ways. In some ways, maybe the slide is actually more flexible, because it's not like you can bend a single reed of a harmonica, all the way down 7 tones or something like this. Anyway, the scale turned out to be great for the blues, this Richter diatonic scale, once it's modified by bands. And inexpensive, portable, an ideal folk musical instrument. Now, I mean, growing up, the way I got to it, I'll just do this real briefly, is my brothers, my 2 older brothers, were way into the blues, and they listened, and country actually, and they listened to stuff all the time. And my brother Bobby found a harmonica that was my dad's or whatever, and started trying to play it, and played a little bit, and learned "You Got to Move" by the Rolling Stones. Again, that's a Blind Willie Johnson song initially. And he showed it to me, and I did it. And I never stopped. Okay, and he stopped. But I just kept going and playing and busking and playing out. Like in college, I was in a band called Werewolves of Beltsville at the University of Maryland, and shit like that. Busking here and there. Trying to busk for a living in London in 83 and 84, although I was writing too. But I was broke as shit. There's nothing like playing one of these in the tube station at Holborn in London. Holborn. Holborn. I could fill up the whole gigantic thing with the huge escalators with sound. Uh, Now, there's not a lot of things this size that will enable you to do that. Right? I got as good as I wanted on the harp. This is what I realized. Like, I knew a lot of people that, or some people that went completely mental and got technical on the harp, and I observed them from afar. So again, I slightly knew this guy Pierre Beauregard. You know, he did that. Like, he went all the way. It's an easy instrument to play, but if you want to play it with ultimate technique, like Jason Ritchie or like Pierre Beauregard or whatever, it's the hardest instrument to play because it's so simple, and now you're trying to do incredibly difficult things that the thing was not designed for. Right? The simplicity is the complexity of what a great harmonica player is actually doing with his mouth, okay, and his breath, and his tongue and all this stuff is immense. When little Walter plays the harmonica, it's no simpler than a sitar. I don't know. Maybe it is. So, I mean, I find that compelling too. Like the simplest object that can be addressed with as much complexity and skill as one we want to bring. All right. Well, I mean, I had fantasies of being like a professional musician, harmonica player. That's a pretty rare career move when I was a kid. Not that, I'm not a singer, so that was a problem too for a harmonica player. But, at a certain point, I wanted to study philosophy. I was doing a bunch of other stuff. I was writing about rock and roll and everything. And I got as good as I wanted to be, which is this good. I'm not going to play, I'm just going to say, good enough to express everything I wanted to express. Good enough where I would go like, damn, I hit it. Yeah, I got that song, right? Or good enough where I could process my breakup with Jamie by just playing in despair, okay? Just like fully engaging the sadness. So when I got to the point where I could express sadness or joy or pain or pleasure or excitement and anything else that I felt on the harmonica, that's where I felt like I was good enough. And I felt like I was never going to maybe be as good as Little Walter or Magic Dick or whatever, my heroes. Just good enough. And I've enjoyed playing this my whole life. All right. Okay, so that's a little bonus episode. Just trying to tell you why I think harmonica is a wonderful musical instrument.